Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into one of the most dramatic and daring developments in the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia. The destruction of the Crimea Bridge, a strike that has sent shockwaves across the region and beyond. This single event is more than just a military operation. It's a statement of power, strategy, and defiance. Let's explore what happened, how it happened, and what it means for the war going forward. The Crimea Bridge, often called the Kerch Bridge, connects mainland Russia with the Crimean Peninsula, which Moscow annexed in 2014. Stretching nearly 19 kilometers across the Kerch Strait, it's both the longest bridge in Europe and one of Russia's most prized infrastructure projects. To the Kremlin, it symbolizes permanence, a physical and political link between Russia and Crimea. To Ukraine, however, it has always been a painful reminder of occupation, a visible scar of lost sovereignty. From the moment the bridge opened in 2018, it became an inevitable target. Ukraine's intelligence services and military planners saw it as the beating heart of Russia's supply network in southern Ukraine and Crimea. It carried troops, weapons, ammunition, and fuel, vital lifelines for Russian operations in the south. Destroying or even disabling it could choke off critical supply chains and isolate Crimea. The latest strike, which occurred in the early hours of June 3, 2025, was nothing short of audacious. Explosions rocked the bridge from beneath, reportedly caused by underwater charges placed at its supports. Ukrainian officials later confirmed that the operation had been planned for months, involving precise coordination, surveillance, and technological innovation. According to their account, nearly a ton of explosives was used, and the objective was to damage the structural integrity of the bridge's pillars, not just its surface. For many observers, this strike marks a turning point. Ukraine had previously hit the bridge in October 2022 and July 2023, both times with significant but repairable damage. Those attacks relied on vehicle bombs and maritime drones. But this latest strike, using underwater explosives, represents a leap in sophistication. It demonstrates that Ukraine has not only improved its technological capabilities, but also refined its strategic approach, targeting the most vulnerable points while minimizing risk to civilians. Symbolically, the attack is a powerful blow to Moscow's image. The bridge has been a symbol of Russian pride, celebrated in state media as proof of engineering mastery and unity. Russian President Vladimir Putin personally drove the first truck across it during its opening ceremony, calling it a miracle of modern construction. For Ukrainians, reducing that symbol to rubble is poetic justice, a message that occupation will never be permanent and that even Russia's proudest achievements can be undone. The timing of the strike also carries meaning. It came amid a tense phase of the war, with front lines stabilizing and Ukraine seeking to regain momentum. Western aid had slowed, political support was being debated in several capitals, and there was growing fatigue among Ukraine's allies. This operation instantly grabbed global headlines, reigniting attention and reminding the world that Ukraine remains capable of bold, strategic strikes that can reshape the battlefield narrative. From a military standpoint, the bridge's destruction severely complicates Russian logistics. Crimea has relied heavily on it for supplies from mainland Russia. Without it, Moscow must depend on alternative routes like the land corridor through occupied southern Ukraine or sea transport across the Black Sea, both of which are slower and more vulnerable to Ukrainian attacks. Even if Russia manages to repair parts of the bridge, the psychological damage is done. Every truck or train that crosses it in the future will do so under the shadow of fear. For Ukraine, the operation serves multiple purposes. It boosts national morale, demonstrating that even after years of war, Ukraine retains the initiative. It sends a clear message to both domestic and international audiences. Ukraine will not wait passively, but will take the fight to the occupiers, striking where it hurts most. It also puts pressure on Russia to divert resources, manpower, and funds toward repairing or defending the bridge, stretching its already burdened military infrastructure. The reaction from Moscow was immediate but measured. Russian officials confirmed that the bridge was temporarily closed for safety inspections, but claimed that damage was limited. However, satellite images and independent analyses contradicted these claims, showing visible structural deformation and partial collapse in some sections. Russian media tried to downplay the attack, but the sheer scale of the explosion made it impossible to ignore. This incident also reignites discussions about the role of technology in modern warfare. Ukraine has increasingly relied on innovation, from drone swarms to cyber operations to precision long-range strikes. The use of underwater drones or specialized marine equipment in this attack shows how the war has evolved beyond traditional land and air combat. It's a hybrid battlefield where creativity and intelligence are often more decisive than sheer numbers or firepower. There's also an element of psychological warfare here. The message is simple but powerful: nowhere is safe. For Russian troops stationed in Crimea, that realization can be demoralizing. For civilians, it undermines the illusion of normalcy that the Kremlin has tried to maintain. For Putin's government, it's a direct challenge to the narrative of control and inevitability. Ukraine has managed to puncture that myth again and again, and this operation is one of the most spectacular examples yet. In the broader geopolitical picture, the strike complicates Russia's regional posture. Crimea is central not just to Moscow's military operations, but also to its political legitimacy. The bridge's destruction weakens Russia's claim that Crimea is an inseparable part of its territory. It also reminds the international community that the peninsula remains a zone of conflict, not a settled issue. For Western nations hesitant about continued support, this moment reasserts Ukraine's determination and ability to achieve tangible results. From a strategic point of view, the attack forces Russia to make difficult choices. Repairing the bridge will take months, maybe longer, and will consume huge resources. Protecting it from future strikes will require deploying additional air defenses, naval patrols, and electronic countermeasures, all of which stretch an already overextended military. Meanwhile, Ukraine gains valuable time to exploit logistical bottlenecks, isolate Russian forces, and plan further operations. For ordinary Ukrainians, the news of the bridge's destruction was met with celebration. Social media lit up with messages of triumph, pride, and hope. Videos showed people waving flags, sharing memes, and playing patriotic songs. For many, this wasn't just about infrastructure. It was about reclaiming dignity and defying an invader who had once seemed unstoppable. It reminded them that the war, despite its horrors, still offered moments of justice and vindication. For Russians, however, the event hit differently. It challenged the state's narrative of control and invincibility. Many questioned how such a critical asset, supposedly guarded around the clock, could be struck again. The bridge's repeated vulnerability has become a metaphor for the larger failures of the Russian military campaign: expensive, overstretched, and unable to secure its most prized possessions. Beyond the immediate damage, the attack's ripple effects could last for months. Supply delays might affect frontline troops, fuel shortages could hinder operations, and public confidence in the stability of Crimea could erode. Every disruption adds friction to Russia's war effort, forcing it into a reactive mode rather than a proactive one. In contrast, Ukraine's ability to dictate the tempo of such events enhances its strategic flexibility. Looking ahead, this strike raises crucial questions. Will Ukraine continue to target major infrastructure in Crimea and southern Russia? Can Russia adapt its defenses fast enough to prevent future attacks? And how will this affect the prospects for negotiations or ceasefire discussions? Some analysts argue that by hitting such a high-profile target, Ukraine seeks to strengthen its bargaining position, showing that it can impose costs until Russia comes to the table. Others believe it's part of a longer-term campaign to make Crimea untenable for occupation. The legal and ethical debates also surface again. Ukraine maintains that the bridge is a legitimate military target, since it directly supports occupation forces. Russia, of course, frames it as an attack on civilian infrastructure. In modern warfare, the line between military and civilian assets often blurs, especially when infrastructure serves dual purposes. However, the precision and timing of this operation, conducted at a time of minimal traffic, suggests that Ukraine aimed to avoid civilian casualties, maintaining both moral and tactical discipline. As we assess this moment, it's important to recognize that wars are not only fought with weapons, but also with narratives. Each side seeks to shape perception to control the story. Ukraine's narrative here is one of resistance, ingenuity, and justice. Russia's narrative is one of resilience, trying to project calm and control in the face of embarrassment. But on the global stage, the image of the Crimea Bridge in ruins speaks louder than any press statement. This event also highlights the shifting balance of the war. As Ukraine continues to develop its strike capabilities, Russia faces growing uncertainty about what can be protected. Drones, sabotage units, long-range missiles, all are tools that allow Ukraine to extend the battlefield deep into Russian-controlled territory. The traditional notion of front lines is fading. In this sense, the bridge's destruction symbolizes a new phase of the conflict, one where distance no longer guarantees safety. From a humanitarian perspective, the hope remains that such strikes, though destructive, will accelerate the end of the war by weakening Russia's ability to sustain its occupation. Every blow to logistics brings the war closer to a stalemate that might compel negotiations. However, escalation always carries risks. Retaliatory strikes could increase civilian suffering, and the cycle of attacks might spiral further. Still, Ukraine's leadership has made its stance clear. No occupation will be normalized, no symbol of annexation will stand unchallenged. The destruction of the bridge embodies that resolve. It's a statement that Ukraine will continue to fight not just for territory, but for justice and sovereignty. In the end, the image of the collapsed spans of the Crimea Bridge tells a story larger than any single battle. It's a story of defiance against a much stronger adversary, of innovation born from necessity, and of a nation refusing to surrender its identity. For Ukraine, it's both a tactical victory and a moral triumph. For Russia, it's a painful reminder that control built on coercion can crumble as suddenly as concrete under pressure. As the dust settles, one thing is certain: this strike will be remembered as a defining moment of the war. It will be studied for its precision, its symbolism, and its impact. It's a reminder that wars are shaped as much by will and creativity as by weaponry. The Crimea Bridge stood as a symbol of dominance. Now it stands as proof of vulnerability. Thank you for watching. If you found this breakdown insightful, please make sure to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more deep dives into global conflicts, strategies, and major world events. The story of Ukraine's fight for freedom is still being written, and this, undoubtedly, is one of its boldest chapters,